We welcome Mel Sheldon Jr. on today's Hibulb Conversations. As we honor our veterans, Mel tells us about his upbringing and reflects on his life of service to his country as a Vietnam veteran and to his city, county, and tribe, serving on committees, projects, and in many roles on Tulalip's board of directors. Hi, and welcome to Hibulb Conversations. I'm Mytyl Hernandez, and today with us is Mel Sheldon Jr. Welcome, Mel. How are you?
Well, thank you very much, and I'm feeling good, and it's good to be with you today.
Thank you so much for being here. We'd love to start by getting to know you. Can you tell us about your ancestry and your upbringing?
Well, my mother was Nola Heminger, and her mother and father, my grandfather was Anthony Heminger, and he was Sisseton Wahpeton. And grandma on mom's side was full Norwegian. They met during the Depression and somehow got along. And after the Depression, they got a job with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and were sent out to the Klamath Agency. And that's where Mom grew up, and Marlene, my aunt, their daughters, and went to Chiloquin High School there. And at some point in time in the late 40s, probably after World War II, Grandpa got transferred up to the Tulalip Agency. And they lived in those houses that, I don't know, we may have some pictures of the BIA houses that were residential orientated. And Grandma and Grandpa lived there with their two daughters. They brought two new daughters to the res. On my dad's side, Mel, Big Mel, as he was referred to, and I was referred to as Little Mel. His parents was Grandma Teresa and Grandpa Robert. Teresa Young from the Young family, and of course Grandpa Robert was from the Sheldon family. And it's always been told to me that there's the Sarah side and the Johanna side. So, and I says, well, okay, that's good. I think I know what side I'm from, but I always remember right in the middle is this gentleman, William Robert Sheldon. He was with Johanna, and they had their kids. They split up, and then he got with Sarah, and they had their kids. So I'm going, we're all one big family, really. That's so right. That's a little bit of what Grandma and Grandpa, and Grandpa Robert, he was the most quietest individual I ever met in my life. He never said much. He was just quiet, doing his own thing, and I don't know if Grandma trained him that way, but it was a workable relationship. And I loved visiting with them when Mom brought us down to the res, because we grew up in Skagit County. Mom and Dad were together till I, about 5 years old, just before I entered kindergarten, and for whatever reason they split up. And Mom had an LPN license, her and several ladies here on the res. I think Dolores Gobin at that time also got her nurse's license or education. And Mom says, well, I need a job. I've got 3 kids. And so Northern State Hospital, which was a mental health institution up in Cedar Woolley, Mom went up there and got a job. So next thing I know, we're up in Skagit County and entered kindergarten in Burlington, and she started working at Northern State Hospital.
Where were you born?
Born, like many of our tribal members, over, I think it was Everett General Hospital back then. Today it's now under a different name, Providence Hospital. And so, yes, born over in Everett, and I have some memories, good memories of here on the res in those years.
And you have siblings?
Yes, Mike and Tony. They're both continued their journey, and then I have 2 younger sisters who Mom had after we moved up to Skagit County, and they ended up graduating from high school in Ketchikan, K-Town, and that's a whole nother chapter of life, Ketchikan, and my beginning of my fisheries. But yes, I have some great, wonderful memories. Not many, but I hold them very dearly, being on the res here. Mom made sure when she moved us up to Skagit County that we maintained our relationship with the res here, with our families. And so she would, on important occasions and such, she would get us all in the car and we'd head to Tulalip. And therefore see my grandma and grandpa. Dad, through all those years, was living down in Klamath, Oregon, down in Chiloquin. So Mom was very, she wanted us to maintain our relationship. So to go see Bernie and Dolores Gobin, it was always on the list. Arnold and Nettie McKay, George and May Williams. She made sure that we connected and maintained that connection. So I was very grateful for that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yes.
And where did you go to school?
Well, depending on what grade we're talking about.
Let's start from the beginning.
Kindergarten was at Burlington, and it was in the bottom of the library.
Okay.
And then first to third grade, we were in Cedro-Woolley at the Mary Purcell School. And then fourth through sixth grade and part of seventh, somehow we ended, Mom got married and we ended up in Mount Vernon. Yes, and those were fun years. We were right on the Skagit River.
Oh, nice.
There was a boysenberry patch in front of us and then the river. And it was a great life. I had a fishing pole and I went down the river every single time I could. And then seventh, shortly after JFK was assassinated, and I remember it like it was yesterday, we moved back to Cedro-Woolley. And so 7th through 9th grade was over in Woolley. And then when I got to 10th grade, I was in Burlington. Burlington was 10th through 12th grade, and that's where I graduated from high school. So it was an upbringing that I got to know people from all three cities, and it was small then. We're talking 50, 60 years ago. Burlington, Cedar-Woolley, Mount Vernon, there were about 3,000 people per city. So everybody kind of knew everybody. I played Little League in Mount Vernon the summer of '63 as I'm asking myself to go back and research it and write maybe a 2 or 3 part story. We played Little League that year. We were not the top team. There was 3 leagues, but we won the city championship.
Wow.
And that year I threw a no-hit, no-run game in Little League, if you can believe that.
That's amazing.
Oh, gosh. And, it was a lot of fun there. And then over in Cedar-Woolley, I played Pony League. So baseball was a real big part of my sports upbringing. Mom made sure that we engaged with our community or school at least. So sports was one avenue there. Another thing, she had us in Cub Scouts. My brother and I, Mike, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, played baseball, Pony League. And then, I don't know where she got this idea, but when I was like a freshman, sophomore, 9th grade, 10th grade, she got me involved with a group organization called DeMolay. And not many people know or hear about DeMolay these days, but it was a junior organization to the Masons.
Oh.
And so she wanted me to learn what a young man should be like, I guess. We wore slacks and sports jackets to our meetings and ties. And we were supposed, theoretically, we would work with our community doing fundraisers and just being junior Masons, I guess. Mm-hmm. So it was a great, upbringing there, learning that part of life. I really take my hat off to Mom for, maybe we didn't get to grow up on the res, but she filled out our life the best she could.
Yeah, kept you active in your community.
Yes.
With all of those schools you went to, I hear you were also invited to several class reunions.
Oh, yes. Our 50th class reunion, you wait all that time and you wonder about all your classmates. And because I had went to all 3 schools, I have friends that I remembered so well, and they were part of my life. So Burlington, I'm a member of, so naturally. Cedar-Woolley, I'm an honorary class member there.
That's cool.
Yeah, they invite me up to their monthly lunch or breakfast they have on Saturdays. And then in Mount Vernon, I'd kept contact with a lot of the folks there through the years, and they said, no problem, come on by. And I got to see people that were in my life from first grade to 12th grade, all in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And it really touched my heart to see everybody.
Was it in high school that you started thinking about joining the military?
Well, yes, absolutely. And, you know, the Vietnam War was going on, of course, on TV, watching it. Walter Cronkite and a number of other reporters, they would report on battles going on. And I'm talking 1966, 67, 68. Of course, the Tet of 68, we all remember that. So, you know, when I was home and watching the news, we'd get these updates. And at some point in time in my senior year, I said, Mel, what are you going to do? And I says, well, I'm not sure, but I want to, you know, the names of those that were killed in action. As a young man, I was impressed. They gave their lives. And I says, can you sign up? And I says, well, I thought about it for a while. And a friend of mine, we were going to volunteer for the service together. That meant that we would go into basic training together, and then AIT, Advanced Infantry Training, noting that we're probably going to go be grunts or infantry. But he had gotten into a little bit of trouble the summer of '69, so all of a sudden I'm left by myself and I have to make a decision now. Fortunately, I'd taken a number of tests, the Armed Forces Qualification Test, AFQT, that kind of gives you where is your strengths and weaknesses. I think they may even still do that today. And so the recruiter I was talking to, he says, well, we can sign you up in the Navy and you can work in a nuclear vessel, but you'll need to sign up for 6 years. And I'm going, 6 years? And at 18, 1 year is a
lifetime, yeah.
Yeah, 6 years is whoa. And where will I be? Well, you'll be in the heart of the vessel, down with the nuclear engine. I said, well, that may not work. But he says, but you've qualified to become a warrant officer. Well, what's that? Well, warrant officers fly helicopters. Really? And I'd never been in any aircraft up to that, never been in a jet, never been in a Cessna 150. It was all new to me. And he says, well, you've qualified, but you need to take a few more tests. And so I did, and I somehow passed the tests, and I had an oral interview with 3 officers down in Seattle in June of '69, right after graduation. And evidently they saw what they liked. They said, he's okay to go to flight school. Doesn't mean you're going to graduate, but you can go to it. You
can go.
Yeah.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah, it was, it was exciting, but I didn't know what was up ahead.
Yeah.
And most everybody who was going to go to Warrant Officer Flight School was going to take basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana. And in August, September, it's hot and humid.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen that many people from all over the U.S. I lived what I thought was a protected life up here in the Northwest. Well, I got down there and made it through basic training. As we talked with each other, I got to know more and more guys that were going to go to flight school.
Oh, good.
And so I knew I wasn't alone.
Yeah.
And so graduation from basic training and orders to go to Fort Walters, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to hear all about your military experience and life. We'll be back with more Hibulb Conversations. Welcome to the Hibulb Cultural Center and Natural History Preserve, where you'll discover the journey of the Tulalip tribes. Our interactive displays introduce you to the legacy of the Tulalip people told in our words and voices. A journey for all to experience. Welcome back to Hibulb Conversations. Today we're here with Mel Sheldon Jr. Welcome back, Mel.
Well, thank you.
So in our last conversation, we talked about basic training. Can you tell me what happened after that?
Well, yes. After graduation at Fort Polk Army Base there, they called it Little Vietnam too. For us basic trainings, it was get through basic training, but for those, if they were going to go on to infantry training, they recreated camps or villages like Vietnam, so they got the nickname Little Vietnam. But so basic training graduation on to Fort Walters, Texas. And the reason it was the Army for me was because in order to, the Army was the only branch of the service that would let an 18-year-old apply and enter flight school to learn to fly an aircraft. In the Air Force, Navy, and Marines, you had to have a 4-year degree before they would let you into flight school.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I was 18, of course, when I entered the Army and basic training, and 18 years old when I went to Fort Walters. And I was still 18 when I had soloed and 100 hours of flight time under my belt. So evidently they said 18-year-olds can do it.
And you did.
And I did, yes. And it was a great experience. Flight school was something that has been with me my whole life. The training that I received, the attention to detail. While I was at Fort Walters, I was a little bit of an uppity warrant officer candidate in the respect that, if you remember, in 69-70, AIM was at very high strength of what they were doing, trying for treaty rights and sovereignty and other things. And so I was kind of sharing those thoughts with the platoon I was in. But that was not teamwork. I was separating myself as an individual. And one day, about halfway through flight school, I don't know how the TAC officers, they were God to us, like a drill instructor in basic training. They had me up against a wall and said, candidate, we want to talk to you. And they explained that while you have your individualism and who you are and where you come from, remember you're a team here. And that team concept really has been a blessing throughout my whole life, whether it be going to Vietnam, flying with teams, or fishing when I was a commercial fisherman, teamwork, getting the net in and out, as well as working on the board of directors, teamwork. You have to have a team to do the best you can. So I was really grateful for the training I got in primary flight school at Fort Walters. So graduated from Fort Walters, Texas. Now here's something that I still puzzle about today. On my floor, the third floor, we had 60 candidates who wanted to become helicopter pilots and warrant officers. 5 months later, when I graduated, there was 21 of us. So the washout rate was 66% or thereabouts. And so I always wondered what was going on. Were they downsizing the amount of pilots they needed? Because I looked at the class pictures before and after, and there was like 60 people in each platoon that graduated, not 21. So it was always a question. I finally, years later, about 10 years ago, I called one of my TAC officers. I says, well, what was it? Were you on a minority quota? Why is that why I made it through? And he just said, no, Mr. Sheldon, it was attention to detail. More pilots, there were more people killed because of pilot error than enemy fire. And that was, wow. So that's why they were so stringent. You got to know where everything is. Same, and it applied on the boat when you get into a storm. You got to know where everything is. And certainly working at the board level, knowing your policies, knowing this and that, attention to detail is so important.
Absolutely.
Yep.
What kind of aircraft did you learn to fly?
Well, the first one was a Hughes 300, and that was a recip, a gas engine. It was the trainer, and some of us elder folks may remember the Seattle Police Department had them as air enforcement back in the 60s into the early 70s. I'd see him walking. I used to fly that aircraft, and it was great to see there. Then onward to Fort Rucker, Alabama, for advanced flight school. Then they transitioned us into Hueys, and the Huey Native American name is Iroquois. And there was a book recently written that details all the Native American names that helicopters are listed as, and so that the Iroquois was. I got about 100 hours in flight school there, and made it through flight school, advanced flight school in Fort Rucker, Alabama, and we graduated on September 21st. We got our warrant officer bars. We were all WO1s, and then the next day we got our wings. and Orders for Vietnam.
Okay. What year was that?
That was in September of 1970.
Oh, that happened very quick.
Yeah,
the
9
flight
months.
schools.
9
yes.
months.
Wow.
9 months of flight school, and I had turned 19 in May, so I was 19 in 4 months when I graduated from flight school, and Orders for Vietnam.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a great. Like I said, the training was second to none. It just helped me throughout life, and very grateful that they had the time to help me understand and be in flight school and stay in flight school and graduate.
So once you were assigned and being sent to Vietnam, what kind of missions were you on?
Well, I got over to Vietnam. As many, we got on these great big jets, and it was like a long flight, 18-hour flight or something like that. I remember we were getting ready to land at Cam Ranh Bay, and I looked out the window, and I saw some guys water skiing. And I'm going, might not be a bad tour. I'm looking forward to this. Then they took us in for the first day or two up in Cam Ranh Bay area, and we got to fill out our dream sheet. And my flight instructor in primary flight school, Captain Joe Locke, he was a first cab man. He flew slicks, and I wanted, because he had stood by me in flight school and made sure I soloed and made it through. I wanted to follow in his footsteps. So I signed up for the first cab. They sent me down to Benoit, down at the south end of the country in 3 Corps, and I had a choice: 1st and 9th or 227th, the Slick Company. And I'd heard nothing but not good things about the 1st and 9th. They were using up pilots like nobody's business. Why, I didn't know then. So I took a fifth of whiskey and I gave it to this specialist who assigned us to different units. It didn't do any good. He assigned me to the 1st and 9th. I'm glad he did. At the end of the day, it was a highly decorated unit that I was proud to be part of, the Charlie Troop 1st and 9th. When I got to squadron headquarters, I looked up at the Chinook helicopter wing they had there, and it had all its battles, and at the very top was Pine Ridge. I think this might be an interesting tour here, since they were chasing our people around in the 1850s.
In this helicopter.
Trying to, yes. And so I got assigned to Charlie Troop, and it was going to be a long year. As I mentioned, in the deep south, it's hot and humid. In Vietnam, it's very hot and humid. And so they assigned me to what I thought was new barracks. The reality was the barracks had been hit by incoming about 3 months earlier, blown up, and they had to build a new one, of which I got to go into. But I'm going, the enemy already knows where to shoot the incoming. So, but sitting there, there was no insulation, so to speak, to keep the heat out, no air conditioning. And I'm going, this is going to be a long year. I need to get in a helicopter now, because they weren't putting me in a Huey right away. So somebody came and said, we're looking for scout pilots. Up goes my hand without thinking, because I can get back, get into a helicopter and start flying right away. And time will speed up a little bit, I thought. So I did, and then I had to go to another base, Lai K, to get trained in the Loach, as it was called, Light Observation Helicopter. It is Hughes 500 is its kind of commercial name. Its Native American name is a Cayuse helicopter. And I learned how to do the emergency procedures and such, that I could fly got checked out in the aircraft. Went back to my unit. They then had me fly in the front seat of a Cobra to watch how they do their missions. So a Loach and a Cobra go out together, and we go out about 3,000 feet up in the, at that altitude. Then I drop out of altitude and go down on the deck, right on top of the trees and jungle and such, and start looking for trails and stuff. That was the scout's job. So I had to sit left seat to watch and see how the scouts fly their missions, how they follow trails and how they communicate with the Cobra up above. And so once I did that for a week, and it was like a carnival ride. in a cayuse, the pilot and crew chief sit on the right side. The observer, which I was doing at that time, my job was to sit in the left seat and hold a smoke grenade. As soon as we took fire, I dropped the smoke grenade, and then the snake would roll in with rockets blazing, and because we drew fire. So it was, like I say, a carnival ride. I was looking at the sky for those couple days, and finally they says, "You're ready to fly now." So they put me in the right seat, and I started flying Scouts, and it was quite a learning situation. Every aircraft has its own characteristics, and I think our fishermen can relate to that. Every boat has its own characteristics, and as soon as you spend enough time with your boat or with the aircraft, you become one with it, and you know how it acts in certain situations and stuff like that. So that was my early learning, was learning how the Hughes 500 or Cayuse worked flying missions. And I did get it into very precarious positions, and God bless our crew. I'll always say thank you to my crew chief and observers. They got in with me every day and flew no matter what. And when I did get the aircraft into a precarious position, I had one crew chief, he said, "Sheldon, if you don't pick up airspeed, I'm going to hit you in the head." He's sitting in the back of me, and he has clear access to smacking me on the head. Well, I got my airspeed up and kept it up ever after, so to speak, within that safe zone that was needed at times. So yeah, great learning situation, and also learning how our team works as a crew. You know, they didn't have to get in the helicopter with me. They could have said, "Mel's a little careless here. We don't feel like flying with him today."
A little young, too.
Yeah, well, yes, at one time I had all three of us were 19-year-olds. And we were all from Washington State.
That's crazy.
Yeah, we thought, yeah, it had its moments. But yeah, it was learning to fly Scouts and being in Scouts. There were good moments, terrifying moments. People always ask, "Well, how was it?" And I says, "Well, it was a lot of fun when I wasn't scared." You know, and I'd never say how much I was scared, but
yeah.
You know, as I developed into flying Scouts, a better pilot with control of the aircraft, and doing, you know, you're flying the aircraft and you're looking down, following trails, and trying to gauge when they're going to open fire on you. Because I knew when I had enemy down on the ground, they're going to have AK-47s or maybe even larger weaponry. And so, you know, you got all these things going on, and then we had radios, so I had communication with my Cobra, and then another radio was if we were in Cambodia, of which we flew in for about 3 or 4 months, then there was also a radio for that helicopter. And then if you were working with somebody down on the ground, you would also listen to them. So you had a lot of things going on,
yeah,
and trying to do your job. But the best part with the radio show was flying out and back. We would listen to AFVN, the Armed Forces Vietnam Radio, and we would listen to country western and rock and roll. And I didn't realize that my crew, some of them were country western, some were rock and roll. And the kind of a vernacular that we used was, the stoners loved rock and roll because marijuana was present in Vietnam, yep, and the juicers were country western. But when they got in the helicopter, it didn't matter. We were all together, yeah, you know, and I was always grateful for that. And you know, I got my dose of country western. I'm old country western, Johnny Cash, Freddie Fender, Crystal Gale, all the old names. They're a whole lot different in country western today. Yep. And of course, rock and roll. So
we have your helmet on display with us today. Can you tell me about this?
That helmet I wore for many, many missions, probably about 500 hours, and I got to bring it home because it was they said it was no longer used in the inventory, and we happened to be out in Cambodia. We went down on the deck, and we knew it was bad guy territory, and right next to it was a Cambodian village and then a jungle. And I swear to God, to this day, there must have been a company of NVA there. And this was in the morning, so I could see their fires, smell their fires, and they were cooking breakfast, I don't know what they were cooking for breakfast. I know it wasn't scrambled eggs and sausages, but they were well disciplined because I'm flying around and it's a fairly large area that they're camped out in, and they're not shooting. And I said, And so I says, maybe you can get them to come out and become targets by slowing down, which I did. And I gave them a target they couldn't resist. And so they opened up. It was like, you'd think Boom City, you just take 10 minutes of that. And they just opened up on us and put a lot of holes in my helicopter, and got my crew chief through the back. And you can see, and I thank you for having that on display, where it enters and goes out. And had my head been tilted a little bit differently, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But luck was on our side. They didn't shoot us down because, again, we would not be here today. Right. We survived that. I flew about half a mile away from where the action was, and they picked my crew chief up in the Huey and medevaced him out, basically. So yeah, it was a morning of tense combat, but it was quick too. And those are the memories that we always will remember as best we can. Yeah. Yeah. So.
How long were you in Vietnam?
A full year. I was very fortunate. I always wondered, it didn't get cut short for any reason, and I was very grateful for that. A lot of the guys, that their tour was cut short because they got wounded, or killed in action, and so, yeah, and so I got halfway through my tour in May of '71. My unit goes home. I didn't have enough time in country to go home, so I was transferred to another unit and flew scouts for a little bit longer. And then they had a couple pilots join our group. It was Bravo Troop 3rd of the 17th, 1st Aviation Brigade. And so getting towards the end of my tour, they had this gentleman who had the training they needed in Loaches or in the Hughes 500. So they said, well, if you want to go down to Vung Tau, because I'd went down there and learned how to become an instructor pilot, you can go down there and help other pilots transition into the Loach. So I spent my last month and a half teaching other pilots how to fly the aircraft. Wow. Yeah, that was the last thing I ever thought I would do. I thought I was going to be combat all the way, but once I went down to Vung Tau, he says, there's no bullets here. And it was the R&R Center for in-country vacationing for a lot of GIs and Viet Cong too. They seemed to not fight down there. They just went down there to relax and have fun.
Ski, yeah.
Water ski, yes. So.
When was it that you were able to finally return home?
Well, as I finished my tour, and I think it was first into October, September 22nd. I got promoted to Chief Warrant Officer, 2nd grade. The captain comes in. He was our platoon leader in it was the net team that we were teaching other pilots how to fly the aircraft. And he come in, he says, Mr. Sheldon, the crew is complaining you're harassing them. And what? I don't understand, sir. And by the way, that midair that you were almost in, the air traffic controller says you were not following procedures. And I looked at him and I said, well, sir, I couldn't break into the radio. Him and this other pilot were talking. And then he burst out laughing. Congratulations, you're promoted to CW2. And it was a week later that I was finished my time in Vietnam and they called it the Freedom Bird, heading home. Unbelievable. I'd made it through a year in Vietnam and I was going, wow, who would have ever thought? Yeah. So got home. Flew into Oakland, and at that time, Nixon was Vietnamizing the war, and also a transition was happening. And if you wanted to stay in, you had to write a letter to the Department of Defense requesting to stay in. And I was now the old age of 20.
The ripe old age.
Ripe old age of 20, a seasoned combat veteran by 20.
Wow.
And I just said, what do you want to do? And I says, well, I want to get education. And I didn't realize I could stay in the service and go to college. I says, let's just get out and go to college.
Yeah.
And so I had 2 months. I got home then in October, and November, December I call it the soft landing months. Coming back from Vietnam, I still had a lot of, nightmares, or am I home now? And I remember, like many veterans, they bought a Pacex catalog stereo system, Marantz amplifier or Pioneer speakers, so mine shows up in early November, and Mom and Stan, my stepfather at the time, had reconfigured a chicken coop so I could have my own place to live. And I remember laying down at night when the stereo system came in and looking at the face of it, listening to CKLG 99.3 on FM, listening to rock and roll music, and I'd look at that. I'd wake up at several times a night, and I'd look at it and say, "You're home now.
Yeah.
You are home." And I'd go back to sleep. So yeah, getting home, it was a whole nother world. Time to now pursue that education goal.
Yeah. And do you think that education or that stereo helped you integrate back into civilian life?
Yeah, oh yeah, it represented, the music that I listened to was a transition. It was, and granted, I didn't listen to much country western when I got home, but, it was there to remind me, but also tell me there's new and better things up front.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service, Mel.
Well, I'm very honored, and thank you, and I want to thank all the veterans themselves for their time, men and women. And Tulalip is amongst many tribes that stands up with their veterans and honors their veterans in the way that they do. And I'm so glad for what we do for our veterans.
Yeah, absolutely. I love working with our veterans.
Yes, thank you.
We'll be back with more Hibulb Conversations. Hibulb Cultural Center Gift Shop. Discover something special and shop our unique collection of jewelry, art, home decor, apparel, books, and children's items. Choose from unique merchandise and handcrafted items with something for everyone at the Hibulb Cultural Center. Welcome back to Hibulb Conversations. We're so happy to have Mel with us today. Thanks for coming, Mel.
Thank you, thank you.
So after the military, you went to school. Will you tell me about that?
Right, yes. I had November, December off, basically, and January 3rd or 4th, I was enrolled at Skagit Valley College. The GI Bill allowed reduced tuition rates, and I started school. I knew education was going to be part of my world. I was not a very good student in high school. I actually graduated from high school with a 2.5, and the reason it was so high is because I got A's in PE.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think it would have been a little lower. But going to Skagit as a community college was probably the right place fitting for me. It allowed me to, the freedom to go to school, and I worked too, and take the classes that I wanted to take while working towards an associate arts degree. So I worked as a telephone operator, got a job, and that was another part of that soft landing I referred to, getting to work with in plugging out lights, as they say. Lily Tomlin portrayed an operator in Laugh-In. And so that's what I did, plugged lights out. And along the way, on that job, I was really amazed on full moons that board would light up like a Christmas tree. People just are affected by the magnetic pull of the moon. Yes. Unbelievable. But made it through Skagit Valley College. I played 1 year of baseball for them. And we even played Everett and all the junior colleges around. And we played 22 games that year.
How fun.
Yeah, it was. I played third base and left field, and we lost out of 22 games. We lost 22 games. Oh. It was not. We were not meant to go to the big leagues, but we had fun.
Good.
It was, and again, it was a time of transitioning in life, going to school maybe, and playing baseball. And upon graduation, then at that time, if you had an associate arts degree, you could go to a larger institution automatically. You didn't have to go, have super high grades, all the competitiveness. And so I went to the UW. I originally wanted to go to Dartmouth, but I didn't have the resources to go back and forth across country. So I said, okay, the UW's going to work. And the tuition, back then tuition was not what it is today.
Right.
So I was able to, again, work 20 to 40 hours a week and go to college. And I remember one job I had, I unloaded trucks for UPS, 4 hours a night, and it was fairly decent pay. The other job, I was a houseboy at a sorority. And we had did the dishes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and set the tables. It was something that I learned to do while I was working at the Chuckanut Manor years back. And it was interesting to see the Greek system from a different point of view, looking at 80 young ladies every morning. And back then, in '76, the hair rollers were big. That the ladies would show up, they'd put their hair up and then go eat breakfast and then on to class, So it was from seeing different groups, or like I say, the Greek system from a different point of view. Also at Skagit, being involved in Native American activities. At Skagit, going back to there, we had the first gathering, powwow, and Indian basketball tournament there at Skagit. And then I think some of our folks at Tulalip were at the U before me. I think Lita Sheldon was part of the Native American group there. When she went to school there, she laid the foundation when I got there, which was pretty cool. So yeah, going to the U, I also majored in political science. I wanted to know more about why the government, foreign policy, Vietnam, why. Trying to learn a little bit more. And then the other one, which I kind of jokingly referred to, is learn why the government treated us Indian people so good. Right. What was the mechanisms that they did? So there was no courses offered in that arena then. There was only one black Afro-American instructor. I took a federal Indian law class, and it was mimeographed and taught by a Jewish lawyer. We didn't have anybody with the educational ticket to be instructors at the UW at that level. So nowadays they do. I'm very proud of the institutions. They've made quite big gains over the years. So yes, going to the U had its time of learning and the challenges. And when I finished, it took a little longer to get through the UW because I was kind of working and fishing during the summers, and wasn't quite sure if I wanted to go back and get a degree, really, But I says, you're there, go take your extra class and get your degree. And I did that in '79. And so I have my diploma somewhere. I'm not quite sure, but I know I got one. And then once I finished my educational goals, and I think my father, he urged me, he said, I don't know every time I'd stop by the res when I was going to school, he'd say, get your education, keep at it, and I'd say, Dad, can you spare any money? And he'd give me $20, and I'd say, oh, thank you. It helped out. It was gas money getting back and forth.
Absolutely.
So he realized the value, and I'll always thank him for that. So graduation came, and then I says, okay, you got the rest of your life. What do you want to do? So fishing was always in my back pocket. I started fishing in 1973 on purse seiners, my brother and I. We fished for, he was the mayor of Saxman, but really the chief of Saxman. He was 70 years old when I fished for him, and he outworked me. I was 22. He outworked me. I couldn't believe it. That was the nascence of starting my fishing career, along with college, going through college. And over the years, I was able to fish in Ketchikan, Cordova, out on the Aleutian Chain at False Pass, Bristol Bay for 15 years, and up to herring fishing up near Nome and Unalakleet. So I got to really go from Ketchikan all the way up to Nome along the coast, fishing in different areas. It was a great experience, and seeing all the native Alaska villages up and down the coast, and understanding the challenges that they faced in small communities where access was by airplane or water, no direct roads, and those would all become important later as I got into tribal politics later. But so fishing was a great part of me. Our Judge Bolt decision that got many of my generation into fishing to support the families, to put food on the table and do the things that were needed. So it was kind of, both education and fishing were helping me along.
Yeah, big parts. Mm-hmm. And when did you return to Tulalip?
Well, that was, gosh, I can't remember the exact date, but I was living up in Alger, halfway between Mount Vernon and Mount Vernon and Bellingham. And my boat was tied up over at Everett, and I was getting about 3 hours of sleep, driving back and forth during fall fishing this time of the year. And one day I just said, this is enough. You're moving down to the res. I want you to be closer to your boat.
Yeah.
And by that time, too, I'd been fishing with our tribal fishermen, so I knew a lot of our fishermen, whether it be out in the salmon banks during sockeye season or down here during the fall season. So it was, you have friends down there, let's get on down there.
Yeah. And
so I did, and I got to live near my cousin, Tony Sheldon. He leased me a little spot, and Kevin Williams, they let me put my little trailer in, and welcome to the res life, as it were. And it was a great time getting to see everybody, and then reconnecting and also knowing the extended family as well as everybody else, and you know, getting to know George Williams, one of our great leaders, chairman for many years. I'd see him, and knowing that we were related, and I'd go down to the dump and sit with him in his truck, and he knew everybody. Everybody. I'd say, who's that? He'd tell me, and he'd tell me the family, and then he'd tell me how I was related to him, and it was a great time to spend those afternoons with George. Himself, and many of our elders at that time were World War II veterans as well. So, you know, Stan, my dad, a whole host of them. It was a wonderful time to sit with George Williams.
I bet. So,
yeah, coming to the res, and you know, getting to know everybody. Yeah, it was great. And then I had a kind of a tough fishing season up in Bristol Bay. I can't remember why, I don't know what it was, but sitting with George, and I said, Dad told me he was on the board, but he never really shared what it was like. Yeah. He told me, and maybe it was George, that they flew back to DC for some land issues here on the res. And that's all Dad ever said. And he didn't say run for the board. He never, he had, I don't know what was his thoughts were, but slow fishing season, I said, why don't you put your name in the hat? Just throw it in. What the hell?
Yeah, what the heck?
What did I know about tribal politics, except for what George told me, you know? And so I did, and I didn't know it. I didn't know. I'd never run for anything. I was a wallflower growing up. Hard to believe, but I was real quiet and watched people. You know, and especially up in Skagit County, where there weren't very many Indian families. So it was me and the Boones, and let's see, Enochs were up there. Some Enochs were up there, and Tim Edwards, Reverend Tim Edwards. He's no longer with us, but I remember the families. And so I put my name in the hat, and I go, what do you do now? And I said, well, I don't know. You're supposed to knock on doors, So I thought of George, and I says, my campaign headquarters is going to be at the dump.
Yeah.
And I did. I went there every weekend and during the week and hucked garbage. And evidently our people like that. They didn't talk much about politics. They didn't have any issues. They just liked somebody to throw their garbage, and I got elected.
Nice service, yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
What year was that?
1999.
Okay.
And I got on. It was a great vote turnout too. And I said, Mel, you don't know your community that well, do you? I said, no, but I'm gonna.
Yeah.
And that began my promise to myself to know our community. Whatever it took, every event, everything I could do for the next 24 years, I would do to be with our people.
Yeah. And is that what motivated you to continue to serve?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Getting to know everybody and that relationship, to say hi, to give each other a hug, and if something was going on, to sit down and listen.
Mm-hmm.
What I did understand is a lot of times people would come up and say, I need to talk to you. And I said, yes, let's sit down. And whether it be 2 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour, a lot of times they'd say, well, thank you, Mel, for listening. I know you can't do anything, but you listened, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, that always means a lot, to listen.
Mm-hmm.
What positions have you held over your terms, and how many terms have you served, or how many years?
Yeah, I'm not that good at math. but 1 year off, but for a total of 24 years at this juncture.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's that, 3-year terms times 8 is 24 years. I remember my first term, as a councilman, and it was a brand new world. Hermie was the chair, and Stan was vice chair, and Cal and Don. I remember it like yesterday.
Yeah.
Great people. They all had their constituents, and they had their areas of speciality, if I may put it that way, as well as their positions.
Yeah.
And of course, I was soon to learn that we all don't have the same position, and there is ways to put our positions out in a good way, even though sometimes we'd get a little boisterous or vigorous in stating our positions and such, and why they should join my position rather than their position. It was a heck of a learning curve for me. And my first couple years were as a councilman. Then I think raised my hand to be secretary, got to be secretary. Then there was one year treasurer, raised my hands for treasurer, and then later vice chair, and Stan was the chair, and he was a great teacher. Him and I, we'd go toe to toe, but we loved it. And I would apologize to him, and he'd put his arm around me and say, it's okay, all's good. He was teaching me all the time, and I'll never forget how good he was at teaching us. Yeah. And then eventually at the time I then became chairman of the tribe. So honored to serve all the positions, services chair, business chair, and what is so amazing about the time I spent is, I don't know if it's the right way to say it, but I got front row seat of the most progressive time in Tulalip's history.
Huge projects you've been involved with.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking about it the other day, and I said, my goodness sakes, this tribe has done a lot. And I got to,
24 years.
In 24 years, yes. And many tribes around the U.S. have done that as well. We're not the only ones, but I'm so proud of what our leaders and our people have stood by, believed, and allowed us to do. The Hibulb Cultural Center. I remember when we dedicated that. I remember when we built the, I remember when gaming first came to the old Q. Wow, what was that like? Table games with bingo,
what a
all
world.
wrapped in one. Life was good. And you know, of course, you know, the gyms that we've built, the relationship with Boys and Girls Club, and you know, so many things we've done. Building homes now. We're building homes now for our people. The other thing at Tulalip is we have more college graduates than ever before in our history, and most of those are women. Women, there's more women with college degrees. Now, you guys, if you're listening, I want you to go get your college degree, or,
yeah.
you know, and the tribe was able to pay for that, you know, to help assist. And you know, we have folks who went to law school, folks who got their PhDs. It's a new world, but also it's a challenging world. And I think with the educational opportunities that are offered, our people are going to be prepared to deal with the challenges up ahead.
Yeah.
This great years that we've done immense things here sometimes I call it the golden era, you know, and I'm so grateful for our general welfare, especially for in our Constitution it suggests that we give dividends to our elders first and foremost. I subscribe to that. Now that I'm an elder.
Now that you're in a new role.
Yes, but it makes a difference for our elders, you know, and if we go back 10 years, somewhere thereabouts, a lot of our elders didn't have the job opportunities that we have today. So their retirement may not be as robust. So this helps their retirement years. It gives them something. So I'm really grateful for that our elders have a more comfort retirement time.
You've also had an opportunity to serve on committees outside of Tulalip. Do you
Yes.
want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I have to give Don Hatch credit, Pinocchio. I remember when he got on, you know, he's been on and off, but one year he comes back and I'm there and he says, you guys need to get out and represent your tribe. Prior to that, we weren't doing it so much, and I listened to him. He says, "Yeah, Mel, you need to represent your tribe." So I did, and that meant going to ATNI, NCAI, NIGA, WIGA, you know, all those things that we have representation, and previous board members have done a great job. Once Pinocchio said, "Get out there and start representing," not that they didn't before, but
more of a push.
It's more of a push to get out there and do it. And the journey for me was so rewarding to represent our tribe at the Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians. I was third vice president and then first vice president, helping, and we represent about 50 tribes in the Northwest, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Western Montana, one tribe up in Alaska, Northern California, and to learn of the challenges that we all have, our commonality and the challenges that we have, and how we can work together as tribes. Because we always don't work together that well because of our issues we have with each other at times. But I got to see that at that level. And then last couple of years I've been at NCAI, National Congress of American Indians, and I've been the delegate for the Northwest, which truly an honor to be with 13 other people that represent Indian country. And the delegates, alternates. So there's 26 of us, and so I'm the current delegate, and very honored to work with our alternate, who was our delegate, but we have to change him back and forth. Term limits and such, is Chairman Leonard Forsman, great chairman for Suquamish, and so it's been real insightful to work at that level, and to see the issues that Indian country faces at that level, how we work with Congress, and also how, you know, Tulalip has worked with Congress and the state legislature. And what I've noticed and watched our board of directors working our expertise so that when we go to DC, when we go to Olympia, they are listening to us.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to give tribute to our staff who prepare us when we travel to represent our tribe or our regional level, whatever it is.
What do you see as important considerations for Tulalip in navigating the future?
Well, in this golden era, it's kind of like, how do you keep the golden era going?
Yeah.
And that means all the programs we have that benefit our kids. We've got great things going on for the kids, and the challenges for our elders, helping them. How do we keep that going? How do we move it in the right way? And so I've been trying to think about that. What avenue? What track? What's the best road here? And ultimately, I said it's going to be the younger generation who are going to make these decisions. But how can we prepare them today for that? So one of the things I've asked for is let's get our team together and do some 5-year, 10-year, and 15-year forecasts. What is the gaming industry going to look like down the road? What is our population at Tulalip? So when I got on in '99, we were 3,200 or thereabouts. Today we're 5,200 plus.
It's a lot of growth.
And I've been told in the mathematics world, at some time our population will explode, because that group will then get into the childbearing age groups, and then they will have their 2, 3, or 4. And what does that mean? So if we can put together all the demographics we can to understand what the future is going to look like, I think that's going to prepare us for the decisions that may be right around the corner or in 5 or 10 years.
What advice do you have for young people who are interested in leadership roles?
Well, I think first have the dream.
Yeah.
And there's always mentors out there. They can be right in your own family, or they can be an aunt or an uncle or a grandma or grandpa. So family is the first step of finding for mentoring. For me, because mom and dad split up, I had 3 or 4 different stepfathers. Not all of them were mentors for me, but a Little League coach was a real big influence on me. The summer of '63, Mr. Nash, gosh, I'll still remember him for our time together playing Little League, and a coach. Also, I'm hoping when we get our school built, we'll have the right school teachers there that become mentors for our kids. In that way, when they spend a lot of time at school, so that whoever's going to be teaching is a big influence.
Yeah.
I still remember teachers from junior high and high school, and of course, always looking for those that can be mentors, and maybe that's a younger generation that they can be mentors. What I'm seeing is coaches in athletics here at Tulalip, men and women who are coaches, they mentor our kids in their own way. Yeah. So, I think it's all going in a good direction, but for young people, finding somebody who can give them the values. Maybe it's, being part of our longhouse, our culture, the values we have in the longhouse. They will hold up anywhere they go in life. So yeah, we've got a lot of good areas that a young person can look for leadership.
Thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your life and your story.
Well, I'm truly honored, and I've always wanted to say to our people here, I was honored to serve and to get to know all of our community best as I could, and to, through the years, for our elders who've continued their journey, they've given me great memories remembering them, and now to see this next generation, the young kids that are coming up, and we're in this together. Yeah. We're in the canoe together, and we're paddling together the right way, and I'm so blessed to be part of that.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Osiam, Haishka, Tigwitsi.
Thank you for watching Hibulb Conversations. I'm Mytyl Hernandez. Until next time.